But thanks everybody for coming. As you may know, hopefully you know, this is our second session on street epistemology, advancing the practice. And we're really lucky to be joined once again by Anthony Magnabosco, who is a pioneer in street epistemology, both as a theoretician and a practitioner. You may have seen him on YouTube, in your favorite podcast, perhaps, talking about many different issues, social, political, everything from gods, ghosts, karma, laws of attraction, and most importantly, for our purposes, he is a founder and the current executive director of Street Epistemology International. So thanks again for joining us, Anthony. And I think to start off, we had a few questions at the end of the first session that we weren't able to get to. So we're going to start off by going over those and making sure that we tie up any of those loose ends. So without further ado, Anthony, take it away.
Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate it. I'm going to try to get through this fast because we have a very short amount of time and I want to cover a lot of stuff, including some video clips to share with you. But welcome to the second session. I will spend about the first 40 minutes, maybe 5 minutes going over the previous questions. I want to spend 35 minutes going over an advanced introduction to SE and show some examples. And then we'll spend the remaining amount of time, maybe 15, 20 minutes to do the Q&A. But there were some questions from the previous session that Jeremy mentioned that we couldn't get to and I wanted to. So just really quick, Shanice had asked, has SE ever been used for tenant organizing? And I never had heard of that before. And I was thinking about it afterwards. I felt like I almost sort of blew that off. I just wanted to say that it sounds interesting. Maybe SE could be used for that. It might be a good topic to bring up in one of the SE communities, share with how you were thinking about maybe using SE and seeing if it would be a good fit. And then Bob had asked, how does SE differ from teaching critical thinking? I've never taught critical thinking, so I don't really know, but a lot of people mention when they learn about SE that, wow, that sounds like something that would be useful for teaching critical thinking. And I think it probably is. It seems like SE is the application of critical thinking or taking critical thinking concepts and working them into a discussion or a dialogue or a dialectical with somebody else and helping people think possibly more critically, or I kind of like to say carefully. I think I'm going to try to start using the word careful thinking instead of critical thinking. Chauncey was asking, are there any non-SE tools you recommend we have in our toolbox for having constructive conversations about beliefs, or areas within SE where you recommend we dig deeper? Probably calming techniques. It could be pretty upsetting or challenging for people who are struggling with their emotions to learn SE in the first place. So if there's anything that you can recommend as far as helping people stay calm and distanced from the emotions that are happening in the conversation, like recognizing that they're happening, but not letting them what's the word I'm looking for? Submerge your conversation. There's also a podcast called You Are Not So Smart, which is really great. It teaches all the things that our brains do to try to prevent us from changing our minds and being usually dogmatic or reckless in our thinking. So check out that. He's also planning to release a book in summer of 2022 that should have a chapter on SE, and the book is called How Minds Change. So check that out. Rhett was asking, are there any parallels here between street epistemology and nonviolent communication? Maybe, I don't know. I don't really know enough about it. Suzette was asking, what are the odds of SE being taught to politicians? Great question. Probably low. There's probably too much to lose, but I was thinking, what if we taught these skills to people before they became a politician? Maybe there would be an incentive where they would have difficulty not using these tools once they became one. So maybe it would be smart is if we started looking for people who might be future politicians and start introducing them to these tools. It might be too late for a politician. I actually made a tweet saying, I would love to sit down with a politician and find out why they think their God is real, because it seems like it impacts all their decisions. And I don't know if they could really back it up. Why would any politician want to do that? There's probably too much to lose for them. Brenda was saying that they're encouraging their research team to start using SE to explore ideas and assumptions in the hope of minimizing confirmation bias that might be occurring. So thank you for your work. I think that that's awesome. I regularly hear anecdotes of people who discovered SE and now they're implementing them in some way or another in their regular business dealings and their family and at their schools. So it's really cool. And then Rhett, this was the final one. Rhett said, it actually wasn't a question, it was just an observation. Rhett was saying, I plan to attend the second one. Maybe he's here. I love SE and used it as a Christian as well. So glad to have you here. Even if you are a believer, I want you to learn these tools so that you can use it with non-believers and other believers. It doesn't really matter who you use this tool with, including yourself. So let me share my screen, and I want to show you I want to refresh your memory as far as what we did last week. Gosh, it was last week, huh? You guys remember this? You remember my joke? Can you see it? You can't see it. We got to zoom in. All right. So in my last talk, I talked about some of the basics of SE, where it originated from, where we are now, and then I introduced this idea of a conversation arc. Do you remember that? So in this discussion, I want to show video clips from a five meeting long discussion that I had with a childhood friend's mom who's a Christian, Catholic to be specific. And I want to try to show what's happening in each of these stages and some of the challenges that you could likely face, especially if you're using SE with a family member or someone who's close to you, and maybe even somebody who's aware of this technique. There's nothing to hide about this technique. You can lay everything out on the table. In fact, that's probably advisable to do. But today I want to advance the practice, so to speak. We're going to critique a street epistemology example, and I want to highlight some of the ethical challenges that can come up when you use this approach, and then we'll end in the Q&A. All right. Let me give you a little bit of background and set this up. I've been having this on and off discussion with a woman named Faith for the last 10 years or so. She discovered that I was an atheist, and I'm uploading these videos. Her son really liked my content. Her son and I went back since preschool. So we went to preschool, kindergarten, grade school, high school, college. He was the best man at my wedding, and we were very close, but he passed away. And I think that event kind of renewed her interest in my own beliefs. And she keeps reaching out to me and wanting me to can you use SE on me? Can you explore my beliefs? So I thought, well, this is an interesting opportunity because we don't have a lot of examples where we're using SE with a loved one or a family or member or friend who is also aware of the method. So she agreed to do some Zoom chats with me. I'm going to show you a few clips. In this first clip that I have here on the screen, can you guys see that clip by chance? You can see that, yeah, both of us there. So this is Faith on the right, and that's me on the left. And in this first clip, it's about 3 minutes long. There's a little timer in the top left-hand corner. And we're going to be talking about what is the cost of belief revision. What I was really hoping is that I could put these clips over these specific stages, but this software wouldn't allow me to embed the videos in that. So I'm sorry about that. But so here we're talking about the impact of the belief, and do we value truth? What would be the risk of allowing ourselves to question our views and then maybe realize that we're both mistaken? So here is the clip. It's about 2 minutes and 46 seconds.
I actually had a couple of questions for you, maybe before we even get into this.
Yeah.
And I'm only asking this because I've had lots of engagements with people about this topic.
Uh-huh.
And here's what I want to know is what kind of impact are we talking about here on you and your life if, like, we really looked at your reasons for thinking that God was real? Like, would it be a hardship for you if you came to discover that your reasons aren't good and maybe you need better reasons, or maybe you do need to lower your confidence in it? It might be a weird question to ask you, but do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah. I can't really think. Yeah, I guess it would have a lot of impact actually, because I'm church music director, so it'd be kind of hard to be a church music director, a Catholic church music director, if I didn't believe what
Right.
we were singing about.
Yes, exactly.
Let me ask you the same question. What if in the process of our discussion, you came to realize, you came to have a little less confidence in your belief in atheism?
Sure.
Would that have an impact on you? Or how much of an impact would that have on you?
I don't think the impact would be that great. Like maybe I'd have to start spending more time going to church, right, on a Sunday or something.
Yeah.
There would probably be a social cost because I'm part of an atheist activist community. So if word got out that Anthony has now become more Christian or something, more of a believer, then that would probably jeopardize some friendships that I have, which really it shouldn't, honestly. But that's a potential risk, but it wouldn't be a big enough thing for me to not accept the facts or something like that. Like I'm willing to pay the cost to acknowledge that I'm wrong and change my mind and change my behavior.
Isn't it wonderful that we both feel that way? It's a wonderful thing, because I'm willing to listen to what you present and talk about the reasonableness of it, and you are too.
Good. Yeah, so that sounds like we have that going for us.
Okay. So I thought there were a couple of things as I was watching that. Is that, did you notice that it was very slow and calm and respectful? We weren't arguing. We're kind of laying everything out there. I really considered her questions. Like I didn't just blow them off. I really wanted to honestly answer her questions as best I could. That also is helpful as far as modeling. So if I'm doing it, more than likely she may do it. And if she's not doing it, well, then I might ask her why she's not. But like we're meeting each other where we're at and figuring out, we're kind of laying the groundwork. And there was a potential distraction in there too. Did you catch it? I'd be surprised if somebody didn't catch this. She said something like, your belief in atheism. Usually when we hear that as atheists, we're like, well, hold on a second. I'm not making the claim. I don't have a belief in atheism. It's just a position on one claim or whatever. Like we could quibble about that, but it was a minor distraction not to get too worried about. Okay. Second clip here. This is where we're establishing the claim. We're managing our expectations, and we're talking about reciprocation. Like who is making the claim here exactly? And is it a good idea to make assumptions about each other's position, or should we be asking questions? And that's really important to do. So here we go. This one is about 2 minutes long with Faith.
There was one thing that you said in there. You said you don't think I can back up my claims. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes, and to be
Okay.
clear, I don't think you can back up your claims, not just to my satisfaction, but here's why this approach that I've been promoting for so long is really good. It's healthy, and it's effective. Is because what we do is ask questions to reveal what your belief structure looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the claim? What are the real reasons? Do they impact your confidence? We're working within your structure to see if you're content with those reasons and methods for being sure that it's true. So,
and I kind of, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, well, I just want to say, so my sense is that I probably wouldn't find your reasoning sufficient to convince me, but that's not my goal in this interaction. My goal in this interaction is to understand how you became convinced, because I think the discovery of how you became convinced could help you become less convinced, because the reasons may not live up to your own standard.
We're laying everything out there. And I think this is like when I do SE on the street, I don't usually go to this level of explanation. Like, this could really, like, what is the claim exactly here? Who's making the claim? Do you want to know the claims that I'm making? I'm going a lot slower and more methodically because this is somebody that I know. It's a childhood friend's mom. So there's a lot more at stake maybe here with this relationship, which might explain why I'm going slower. But I think SE is so great for exploring people's claims, but we don't normally use it with strangers, right? It's usually with family members and friends. So the dynamic is different. And I wanted to lay out my goals very clearly. I wanted her to realize that I'm not really so much interested in the reasons that you think will convince me. I want to understand how you became convinced. And the discovery of hope, like if we discover that you don't have good reasons to support your claims, there's probably an implication for what you're thinking is true. Laying that all out there. I don't want her to be surprised later on. Now, in this clip, this is the one we actually established the claim. Is that the one here? Did I jump to the right? I'm a little lost here. Was that the third clip that I showed? No. This is the third clip. Okay. So in clip 3, let me just play it here. Let's get right into it. This is 1 minute long.
No, not at all. I will say this though, that I don't believe you can back up your claims that there is not a God. So I want you to know we're both feeling that the other person's claims are not believable, I guess is what I want to say.
Well, I appreciate that. And
Okay.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because we should probably specify which claims we're both making. Because one thing that I'm going to really try hard to do here is not make any assumptions whatsoever.
Okay.
And I would ask that you do the same.
Yeah,
because
'cause
that's,
I'm-
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I don't know that I really know what your claims are, but I know that what we were supposed to be doing is looking at my claims and the support for them. But
We can make it a back and forth if you'd like.
I really like that part because that's a common thing that we tend to get wrapped up in, that especially if we're talking to a theist. And the tenor of this talk is largely about religion and God beliefs, because this is the SSA, but just try to keep this in mind, that these suggestions apply for any claim that you might be discussing where you're using this tool. I want to not get distracted or have her focused on claims that she thinks that I'm making, but I'm not. So I wanted to bring attention to this, that so far, I'm not really making any claims here. You've been making these claims about your views, and please don't assume that I'm claiming that your God, or that please don't assume that I'm claiming that I know that your God doesn't exist. That's a very common thing that we hear as atheists, and we have to clear that out. And that's what I was attempting to do here. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, clip 4. All right, in this clip, this is where we are going to identify some of her reasons for thinking that it's true. I repeat it back because my ultimate goal here is clarity. I want to understand what her reasons are for thinking that her claims are true. So here are her reasons.
Can I repeat back what I'm hearing?
Yeah, please do.
Have you heard me say that in my video?
You'll probably clarify what I'm saying. Okay.
Well, that's my goal.
Okay.
Because I want you to hear what I'm hearing, because if I misheard it, then you can correct me.
Okay, thank
and
you.
all sorts of things. So from what I'm hearing now is that there's 2 main reasons why you think God is real. There's a collection of books that have stories in it that convince you for one reason or the other that God is real. Like, you find that compelling. And then the second thing is that you start with the idea that there's an uncaused cause. And it's because of these 2, I'm going to call them reasons, but I don't know if that's the right word, justifications, examples, supporting structures. I don't know how you want to look at them, but I'm hearing 2 things: the Old Testament and the idea that there had to have been an uncaused cause. And it's those 2 things that are contributing heavily to your view that there's a God.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 big ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I start with the uncaused cause because that would be logical to start with the idea of God the Creator, And
Right.
then I look at the Old Testament as his revelation of himself to hundreds of people over hundreds or thousands of years. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And those are I don't know if you want to call them reasons or supports or foundations, whatever. You can call them whatever. Foundations, maybe.
Okay. You probably remember from the first talk that when we're doing SE, would you mind admitting that person, Jeremy? Because it's blocking my tabs just a bit. We expect people to be able to reveal the reasons that support their confidence that something is true. And sometimes you meet people who say, well, I don't have any reasons. I just think that it's true and that's good enough for me. But that's unusual. Sometimes you just need to repeat that back and people realize, oh, I probably should have a reason. And the other thing about reasons is sometimes people give reasons that aren't necessarily the reasons why. So it's a good idea to ask them, like, if those reasons weren't there to your satisfaction, would it impact your confidence at all? And that's what I want to try to do in this next clip is assess the manner with which she's weighting her reasons. Actually, that's the clip after this. I want to identify the reasons, repeat them back. I apologize. This is the weighting reason clip. I want to ask her if the reasons work both ways. Do those two reasons, the Old Testament and then the uncaused cause, do those only serve to bolster your confidence, or would you allow them to impact your confidence in the opposite direction? Sometimes people don't even think of it. A lot of times people say, I can get rid of that reason and that reason, and I'd be just as sure. But this is a really good exchange where we kind of get into this. So reason weighting. Here we go.
Well, this is the final question that I had for you today, is about those reasons or supports, those things. Like you've mentioned these two things off and on over the last several years. Like I know that they're very important to you because you tend to lead with them. So my question is, and this might be hard to imagine, but if we explored those two reasons and you came to discover to your satisfaction that they're not good reasons, that you're missing something or something got missed, or I never considered that, and because I never considered it and I'm now considering it today, I'm now less sure that that's a good reason. If we were to look at these reasons together and you came to the understanding that maybe they're not as strong, that's maybe the word I'm looking for, maybe they're not as strong to support the weight that you're putting on it, meaning the God claim, what would you do? Would you ignore that discovery and say, well, I'm just as sure it's true because I've got all these other reasons? Or would you allow yourself to let that impact your confidence that God is real?
Now that's a really important question because the answer to that question helps you decide where to go. If she says my confidence wouldn't change at all, then I would explore that. I find that really interesting that you surface these reasons, but the discovery that they're not good reasons would not impact your confidence at all. What else might be propping up your certainty or your confidence that your conclusion is correct? But she actually does confirm that those are her reasons. So in this second to last clip, this is where I'm gonna check her consistency. One of the miracles that she raises, one of the reasons that she mentions is miracles. Let's see here. Here we go. My bad. I'm sorry. I the way that I laid these videos out, they're not matching with my notes. I'm like struggling to tie it all together. Yeah. Let me see here. Assessing the waiting process. I think I just might have these out of order. Yeah, my bad. Okay, so this is the waiting process where one of her reasons for thinking that the Old Testament or the New Testament is a reliable source of truth is because there's miracles in it. So naturally, I want to explore, well, how, because it's street epistemology, how did you conclude miracles are happening? And that's what happens in this exchange. This one is a little bit lengthier. This is 4 minutes and 33 seconds. We're assessing her waiting process, which is a really big part of SE. This is the epistemology part of it. How did you decide to weight that reason, in this case, miracles, high? Why did you think that that's a really strong reason? There's also a moment of aporia, or reflection. If you can have a conversation where you or your conversation partner end up taking a few seconds to think about what you're talking about, that's so valuable, because that's where you're reasoning. You're reasoning about your reasoning, and that's what street epistemology is. And then right at the very end of this clip, there's a deflection, and I want to see if you catch it.
No, it's just the New Testament is full of examples of all the miraculous things that Christ was able to do, because he was God, fully man.
Okay. So I want to take one of these examples. We can do the water into wine. We can do the curing of lepers. I think I'd kind of like to stay on that one because it's an interesting visual. But
oh, and people who were blind from birth and now could see. People who were deaf and now can hear. You know,
so
people who were lame and now are able to walk.
Lots of examples.
On and on. There's lots of examples.
Lots of examples. And here's what I'm hoping to do. I'm hoping that we can look at one of them to think about all of them and to think about the reasoning process that's being used. So essentially, does that make sense?
No.
Oh, really? I want to take the one example of Jesus curing lepers and talk through your reasoning. Like, how did you get from claim to evidence to conclusion? Claim, evidence, conclusion, right? There's a claim, something happened. There's evidence to support the claim. And then there's the conclusion. I can believe that this is true because I've concluded that this is good evidence for thinking that it's true.
Right.
Okay. So in the example of the lepers, what would you call the claim?
That they had leprosy and that they asked Jesus to cure them, and he did.
Could I say Jesus cured lepers?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the next step of that is the evidence to support the claim. So what evidence would you say that you have? You don't have video or pictures. What evidence do you have to support the claim that Jesus cured lepers?
Well, it was written about in other books of the Bible too. It wasn't just, that was not in just Mark. I mean, it's in a number of the other books of the New Testament. So there's a lot of evidence and a lot of different writers over periods of time there.
Okay.
And the thing is, if you see Jesus as being the the Son of God, that's the thing. He was. If you start with him being the Son of God, then it's not hard to just realize that that's something he did. It showed that he was God.
A person, in order for somebody to weight the evidence, here's what I think I hear you saying. Your evidence for thinking that Jesus cured lepers is because it wasn't just written down once. It was written down a couple times across this collection of books.
Several times, yeah.
Yeah, several times. And on top of that, because I think Jesus is God, it lends credence to the story.
Well, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. What I'm
If
trying
you
to
already
understand,
believe he's God, it's just interesting to see all the stuff that he does.
does somebody have to believe that he's God first in order to find the evidence credible?
I don't know. It's a good question. That's boggling my mind. Sorry. Which comes first, the belief in Christ or the belief in in his miracles. I don't know that they need to be sequential. You could find the miracles being something that convinced you that he was God, or you could say, I know he was the Son of God, he was God, and so therefore it's not surprising he does these things. I don't know. Are we going to have time to get to uncaused cause at all?
Interesting there at the end. So there was a really good moment of reflective thinking. We call that aporia. You're thinking about your thoughts. And then at the end, she wanted to move on to a different topic. That's usually an indication that the person's uncomfortable with what you've just talked about. You don't have to like call them out on it, but you should recognize it and maybe say, this is probably something I want to focus on more. Is this the right time to do it? Or should I maybe table it and then try to bring it up at a later point? And then let's see here, this last clip here. Yeah, check this out. So in this clip, I introduced this idea of a thought experiment. In her view, if a story is dutifully passed down from generation to generation, then you could be sure that it's true. So I was trying to illustrate her reasoning through a thought experiment. And I've got this, there's this guy, Doug, he's got a channel called Pine Creek. You should check it out. I think he developed this flying man thought experiment. Basically it goes, if his great-great-great-grandfather or ancestor claimed that he flew unaided across the Grand Canyon, would you believe it? And then the point of the experiment is to keep adding on reasons. Were there 500 witnesses? Well, yeah, there were. The book says that there were. There were 12 people that also went around to tell people about this wonderful story. Do you believe it? Do you believe it now? And it's meant to reveal at what point somebody would begin to start believing it. And that's what we're talking about here. This one is about 5 minutes long, this little clip. We're trying to explore her consistency. And then I encounter some resistance. She's not willing to participate in my thought experiment all of a sudden. So I want you to see how I reacted to that. I didn't get frustrated, but I wanted to talk about it.
You can make up all kinds of miracles that he performed to prove that he was the Son of God. Okay, if you want to add all that in there, but I don't, that I think with Christ there was just unbelievable proof that he was actually God incarnate.
And if we countered all of the same reasons that you would give, miracles, prophecy, historical accuracy, or whatever, like if we started just matching them one by one, at what point would it flip for you and say, man, Anthony's friend Doug, his great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was the Son of God? At what point would you believe it, is what I'm wondering.
And that he was the Son of God, I'd like to look at all the writings that showed all the miracles that he did, and all of the, we have just this one thing about his ancestor, that he flew unaided across the Grand Canyon. But
yes.
you'd have to look to see all the other things that prove that he did all these miracles and everything else like that, and there's nothing like that you told me.
So if we counted up all the miracles that are in here, or accounts of miracles, or I would say claims of miracles, because I'm skeptical. If we looked it up, let's say we totaled them up and there were 720 of them in there. And we looked at the book that was generated from Doug's great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, and there were 720 in there, or maybe there were 900 in there, or maybe there were 60, who knows? I don't know if you even need parity or not. Let's say it matches. If there were the exact same number of miracles written in Doug's book, Doug's grandfather's book, compared to your book, your collection of books, would you be more apt to believe it?
But does he have this book? Does Doug have this book?
This book does not exist, but I'm
saying, we still have the Bible. We still have all these things that were written from way back there. I mean, with Doug's grandfather or ancestor, I would like to be able to see all the people who wrote all the books, that have survived to this time, being changed all the way down. There's just nothing like that.
If
There's
there was,
nothing like this.
if there was, would you believe it? Would you believe
But
that?
there isn't. You're making up something that is, if you showed me a collection of books that were all written about all the miracles of this ancestor, but you don't have anything at all parallel.
Well,
I mean, I know you're making up this story,
okay.
but you have to, we don't have the record from 1,000 years ago of Doug's ancestors. We don't have the record, but in the Bible, in the New Testament, we have that dutifully written, dutifully copied for 2,000 years. It's a whole different thing. Your analogy breaks down with this ancestor like that, because you're making it like all these other religions that are one person and one little incident and things like that. This analogy, if you in fact had that and could show me the collection of books written about his ancestor and all the proofs that he was really God, and all the writings of many people that had been passed down, carefully copied for 1,000 years, that's not what it is. It's nothing like it. So your analogy doesn't fit the New Testament at all.
Okay, let me just share my observation. I think it's interesting that I'm getting pushback on participating in the thought experiment, when initially you were participating in it to some degree when we were exploring him, like that there was this book that said that he did this in 500 people. I didn't get much pushback, but when I started bringing in other reasons that you're using to justify your book, suddenly you don't want to participate in the thought experiment. I find it a little interesting that that's the case. I don't want to just sit on those things. I'd like to bring them forward so we could discuss them. Sure. Because I feel if we don't address it, it might result in frustration on my end or something like that, or that type of thing.
Yeah.
All right, so that's a good tip, I think, like an advanced tip, is when you recognize things that are upsetting you, try to call attention to it, but be delicate in how you do it. You don't want to be accusatory, because she may not have even recognized that she was entertaining the hypothetical to a certain point, and then something flipped. She didn't want to do it anymore. So rather than just moving on to the next topic or arguing about it with her, why are you not participating? You did before. I'm reflecting on what I'm observing. Right? So this is all about reflection. You're even in the moment reflecting on what you're hearing about things in these conversations. And then I wanted to show one more clip, and I'll have to bring it in from my, I'm going to drop it in here. One more clip. Hopefully I can bring it in here while I'm doing this. Here we go. Sorry, I got to arrange my windows a little bit. This is
you reminded me of one more question I want to ask you.
Here we go.
And because this is at the back of my mind, because I know how I ask really good questions and you're being a sincere interlocutor. So I think with that mixture, we can make some real progress.
I do too.
But what I'm wondering here is how do you think you would be able to cope with the idea of your loss with David?
That's her son.
Without this belief? Because I see it as a potential reality from talking with me, even though you may not see it. And I don't want to take something away from you that's necessary.
Oh, it gives me great comfort. My faith gives me great comfort, absolutely. But that's why I had to feel, I had already what I thought was a very solid faith and belief system. And that's why I can take comfort in that. So if I no longer if my belief system collapsed, then I would mourn him in a much different way.
Mm. You'd find an alternate way to mourn the loss of your son.
No, I would just plain mourn him because I would feel like I'll never see him again. I'll never see him on this earth, but I believe I will see him in heaven for all of eternity.
Right.
I believe he's there now and smiling down on us. But anyway, the thing is, yeah, if my belief in God and my entire belief system collapsed, absolutely, then I would melt into a puddle.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, the only thing that has kept me from melting into a puddle is my belief that he is in heaven and I will see him again.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, does that answer your question?
It answers it, but it doesn't. I'm still unsure if I should proceed.
Oh no. Don't worry about it, because I am very confident in my beliefs, just as you are in yours, and so I think we can proceed, because if you would see things that I believe being things that you also believe, that would cause a lot of problems for you.
Oh, I see. Okay, so now this
So
is
just the Dave alone is not going to be a problem for me.
yeah. Now I'm wondering though if you're, I'm being completely honest here. I'm wondering if you're putting pressure on yourself to give me the most convincing argument for why you think it's true, not strictly for the purpose of your own benefit, but maybe like it's a mission of sorts to bring me along or something. Here's my worry. I'm worried that one of your motivations for continuing is to bring me to your view. Now, and I'm not worried because like I don't want to believe it or something. Like if it's true, I want to believe it. But I'm worried that your desire to save me, perhaps, is causing you to participate in something that could lead to your own puddle.
All right. Well, that clip was actually at the very start of the conversation, by the way. So we had a really good talk about, does she value truth? Would she be willing to pay the cost of the loss of this belief? And it's a tough call. You have to make the decision. Am I going to proceed, or is this conversation over? But my advice is that this is a decision that you should be making with your conversation partner. When somebody says that they would turn into a puddle if they lost this belief, you need to take it seriously. However, you should also double check to see if it really would be as devastating as they think that it is. But this is a decision that they need to make. Now, at the end there, the way that she was reacting to my question made me think she doesn't think that she's wrong. She thinks she's so secure in her belief that I got the sense that she wasn't really considering the possible impact that our discussions could have on her view. So I didn't show this clip here, but we end up talking about how, well, let's proceed gingerly here. Let's go very slowly and carefully. And if at any point we feel that this is becoming too much or becoming uncomfortable, then we're going to stop. So we did that. The clips that I showed prior to that are actually the ones that happened after that first clip. So I'm sorry about that. So we had that discussion about, do you value the truth? What would be the impact? Do you really want to proceed? Should I proceed? These are really big, important ethical challenges that you're going to find yourself confronting when you are applying SE to deeply held beliefs, because these beliefs serve a very important purpose for people. And as you can see in some of those earlier clips, the reasons that people have for thinking that they're true are often very, very weak, but people don't necessarily recognize it. You can be very overconfident, and then the discovery that not only am I mistaken, but I was overconfident in my mistakenness. And now there's all these implications that I had no idea that I should even be considering those. You got to hit those very early on with people, especially if they're people that you love and you value the relationship and you want to be there for them afterwards too. So, okay, that went a little bit long. I apologize, but I wanted to get those clips out there and really show you how deep these conversations could potentially go. And I'm going to start uploading these probably in the next week or so. I'll start uploading. They're about an hour long each. Okay, this is the phase. Where are we here? We've got 13 minutes left. Is that right? Gosh, I want to get to your questions. So from this point on, please start. I'm so tempted to look through. What I'll do is I'll do another dump of your text. We'll do that after the fact and I'll read that. But if you can, start typing in your questions here slowly. The second I start addressing a question, that's probably your cue to not type your question so that I have some time to answer it. But please go ahead and type your questions in now. That would be easier for me rather than scrolling up. No questions? That can't be right. Okay, you're gonna make me scroll up. I do see the observation here that grief can cause belief in God. It's a coping mechanism. Yeah, we really unpack that. And thankfully, she says, it's more important for me to believe the truth, even though it would be devastating. You know, I'd have to figure out a way to cope with the loss of my son and the idea that I wouldn't see him in heaven. And that was the green light for me to go ahead. How can we have conversations with people who use the God of the gaps argument? I guess it would depend on what the argument was. That comes up in this series of videos. In the 5th video, one of her reasons for thinking God is real is that there had to have been a first cause, and that had to have been God. So you have to figure out what their reasoning is for thinking that it's true compared to where you're at on that same scale. Like when I think about the start of the universe or something, I'm at I don't know, but it seems like you're going a little further. Can you walk me through that? Why are you actually giving an answer? Oh, Kevin says I can go longer. That's awesome. That's what I would do with the God of the gaps. But for the God of the gaps argument, it's kind of important to actually have an example that you can be using as a tool to talk them through it. There's a good observation here. I want to touch on it. Sabrina, where did it go? Okay, I'm getting overwhelmed with questions, so just, please stop typing them just for a second. I need to say that I probably really need this because it makes me very uncomfortable. I need to say that I really probably need this. I'm not sure if you're referring to the exchange that you observed or not, or something else. So maybe you can phrase that as a question. What if they are afraid of losing their belief? How do you proceed? What I usually do in that case is talk with them to assess, like, what kind of impact are we talking about? Would you be devastated for the rest of your life, or would you struggle with it and then find ways to cope with it? Or here's another thing is I'll ask them, I understand that you have this belief and there are likely other people that don't. How do you think that they're managing to deal with the loss of this belief? How do you think that they deal with the loss of a son or a loved one? And they likely know people who don't believe in any gods who have experienced those things. And then they can relate to how they start explaining how they think that person might be dealing with it. Like, well, maybe they pull up photographs or play music from their loved ones or something. It could actually help them think about how their friend is coping with it and maybe how they would cope with it. So I don't just say, it'll be okay, it's no big deal. Like, I don't dismiss it. I want them to be reasoning through it themselves. Thank you for going a little longer. I appreciate that. Is there a right time to talk about the inerrancy of Scripture? Well, only if they bring it up. And I don't think she ever says the Scripture is infallible. Like, there are no mistakes in it whatsoever. If she did, I'd go there, but I don't lead with it. I don't say, do you think, I guess I could say, do you think your book is true because there's no errors in it and there's no contradictions? Because I've got all these great contradictions to show you. You got to stop doing that. Don't anticipate where they're going. Just ask them where they're going. So the right time to talk about the inerrancy of Scripture is if they bring it up. Let's see. Has anyone credited you for changing their minds? And if so, do you know what it was that caused them to start doubting? Yeah, several people that I've spoken with have said that, as well as people who have watched my videos. They've watched 10 videos. They started asking themselves similar questions. And then that was the impetus for them to start questioning, doubting, reconsidering, and then abandoning their belief. So yeah, it's happened quite a bit. Not just with God beliefs, but other stuff too. I find it interesting that you mentioned modeling behavior. I wonder what you find interesting about it. Okay, that's a little too lengthy for me to get into right now, but one of her reasons is because she plays the org. Yeah. At the end of this 5-hour-long discussion that's chunked up into 5 talks that I've had with her, we end up getting, I kind of hinted at this at the first talk that I gave with the SSA. We explore the quality of her reasons, and I think pretty accurately revealed that they're not good reasons. But she was very excited that her faith became even stronger as a result of it. And it made me wonder, well, what other reasons could there be? Well, there are probably likely psychosocial reasons that are propping this up. She might have to, like, she could probably still be the organist here, but maybe those songs wouldn't resonate with her as much, or those relationships at the church maybe would be in jeopardy or not quite as strong as they are today. That's probably a lot of what's happening here with these beliefs, is that they're not evidence-based beliefs. We tend to say that they are because we're expected to have evidence for our reasons. And it's almost kind of like weak sauce to say, well, it just gives me a meaning, a purpose, and a sense of community, and I feel more loved, and it makes me sleep better at night. We're not usually that honest with ourselves about why we have these views, but that's ultimately up for her to decide. You know, is she willing to make that choice, especially at this point in her life? She is rather old. She's 77 years old. How do you keep calm instead of getting frustrated and calling them brainwashed? Because they're not. So they're not brainwashed. They have beliefs in their mind that they haven't really processed that much. We all do. So once you start viewing people as separate from their beliefs, it distances yourself from all these knee-jerk reactions of getting frustrated. And it's also helpful to remind myself, if I did get frustrated with her, it would have set the conversation back. So reminding myself about that really helps. I do know that there are some people who will do meditation before they do their SE talks with people to stay calm, or they have other calming techniques that they found useful. Sharon says, I just feel flustered and become anxious and would sound like an idiot. You mean, like, I get the sense that you're not saying when you're on the receiving end of these questions, but maybe when you're on the asking end of these questions?
If I was on your end of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's why I don't ever approach it. And I probably really need to learn this, because it makes me so uncomfortable. And that's a pretty good clue that I need to work on that, you know?
Yeah. Well, it helps knowing that I'm being...
all my life.
It does help knowing that
I'm a lifelong atheist, yeah.
Realizing that I'm being recorded does help me stay calm. You know, if I felt like I was being flustered or getting anxious, I would probably try to recognize it. Like, I think I even do, like in one of the points of the conversation, like I might even admit, like, I feel like I'm getting upset and frustrated here, and I really don't want to do that. So maybe we can just go back to some other topic or take a little break or end the talk. Bob is calling me out about my organization of the clips. Yes, I'm sorry about that. That was very horrible. I really wanted to hit that one first because it kind of sets the stage for the rest of them. So I'm sorry about that. Are you assured that the quality of her life will improve if she gives up her religious beliefs? No, that's for her to decide. Yeah, let's see. How might we approach our own conversations in the way you did with a person whose relationship you value? Very simply, think about what your goals are, reveal your goals to your conversation partner, get their informed consent, invite them to a discussion, ask them to surface the claim that they want to discuss. You can ideally do it over video chat or in person. So much is lost over text that it's good for practicing maybe, and maybe a lesson in futility or frustration in and of itself. Try to do face-to-face or video chats. if you can. Just showing that you care enough to take the time to engage with them goes a really long way. And recognize also when you think that you might be crossing the line. You know, like, I value this relationship too much to go any further because I'm worried about the impact that my questions would have on your state of mind. That's essentially what I was doing in one of those clips there. Ted says, practice, practice, practice. The Discord group is awesome. There is if you go to streetepistemology.com under communities, you'll find a link to a Discord server, which is very active, and they have practice sessions 2 or 3 times a week on different times, so that regardless of where you're at in the world, you can do it. I do have a link to the Discord, but I'm afraid to like poke around my computer to find it. So maybe somebody can drop an invite link to the SE Discord. How and when to converse with family members. Who uses the death of a loved one? Oh, don't get me started, Peter. So there's a interesting wrinkle that I'm going to probably reveal at the end of the 5-part series, and it has to do with the death of her son and how they handled that. Oh, thank you, Miklas. There's the link in there. I ask this questions because they know you don't dare to argue. Yeah. Were there any more questions? I think that might have been the last of it.
We do have time for 1 or 2 more questions if folks are itching to ask. Looks like we just got a new one.
Yeah. Philip says, what changed for you that moved you from acting the angry, reactive atheist? What changed for you?
Yeah. Originally,
I get the question.
Angry.
Yeah, I get the question. I was a pretty angry atheist to begin with, and now I think I'm much more calm. I'm willing to take criticisms, you know, like, okay, yeah, I screwed up on the clips. Okay, I'll try to do better at that. But I think what really helped was practice. I saw earlier somebody said practice, 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 and that really is probably one of the best things that you can do. It's also helpful to remember that beliefs are separate from people. People are just encountering claims or beliefs. They're finding them convincing to some degree, and then they accept them. And then they allow those beliefs to impact their behavior. It's something that we all do. When you start thinking about beliefs and claims in that way, it's easier to see the person as a human who just happens to have a view that they probably just haven't processed or thought much about. So it calms me down in that way.
Thanks.
Yeah, great questions. And we have 1 more minute, maybe one more question. Thank you very much, Suzette. I appreciate that. Sorry about the screw up of the order of the clips. When I release them in series, you won't have that issue. Okay, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for coming, Anthony. I certainly found it absolutely fascinating, especially, you know, just watching your interactions with your conversation partner struck me, you know, how much care you both had for each other, in part because I felt like there was both of your presence, but there was also sort of this absence of the person who connected both of you. And it was interesting for me to see both kind of wanting to really give the other person the benefit of the doubt in every respect. And so I just thought that was absolutely fascinating. And thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Before we go, I want to just thank all of you again for coming, particularly those who came to both sessions 1 and 2. I think this was really productive and gave us some of these tools to get started in some cases, or to advance our own practices.